Grab your fabric scraps because today we are going to make a scrappy dog leash that is made out of fabric scraps, 1-inch strips of fusible fleece, a clip, and an optional D-ring. Also optional is a quilter's clapper. I'm going to show you how and why I love to use that when we get to the ironing stage of this. But first, let's talk about our fabric. Non-directional or solid fabric, certainly the easiest to use. You just need anything that you can cut to 4 inches wide. And I also like to have a piece that is about 17.5 to 18 inches long in a darker fabric for the handle, because this piece is going to flip and become our handle. And I always like something dark because you're putting your hands on there, so you don't want your beautifully constructed leash to get dirty on the first time out. You can use lighter fabrics as well, but I usually like to keep them in the leash and also not on the part of the leash that might touch the dog. I apparently have rules about this. So I'm using some fabrics from my Spring Barn Quilts fabric line from Riley Blake. I'm mostly using non-directional. The windmill is a little bit directional, but doesn't matter as much. But I also want to show you how to use a directional fabric in a way that will work, that you'll be happy with if you really, really want to. So before we dive into sewing, I just want to show you how to use directional fabric if you want to on a dog leash. Now remember, I told you we need pieces of fabric that are cut 4 inches wide, but only 2 inches of that is actually going to be showing on your leash. The other 2 inches are going to be folded and tucked inside to conceal the raw edges and give us a little bit more bulk. How you cut it and the pieces that you pick is going to impact how your leash is going to look in the end. So I'll keep that right there so you have it for reference. Now, the first sample I want to show you is where I took a scrap. You'll notice the direction of the chickens is going this way. Not ideal, because here's what happens when you get it folded and pressed into the dog leash shape. We got lucky that these chickens look okay, but then you just have like these chicken feet. You half see a container, can't even tell what that is if you don't know the fabric. And over here, you got a couple chicken heads. Luckily, we didn't end up with a chicken with its head cut off on that. But in my opinion, directional fabric, you don't want it going this way to look cute on a dog leash. So this piece is what we're going to put on the leash that we're making today. And it's going to work really well because I chose very carefully where to cut these chickens out. So what you're going to do, if you're using something directional, is you're going to take your ruler, and you need a see-through ruler for this, and you're going to line it up to be 4 inches. And you want to make sure that whatever you want is within the center 2 inches, because these center 2 inches of fabric are going to be what shows on your dog leash. These 2 inches here and here, they are going to be inside, never to be seen again. When you're doing your fabric, you can kind of I kind of hold where the 4 inches is so I know, and just kind of move it around and decide what will work if you're working from a big piece, or do the same thing on your scraps. Moving on, get the rest of my scraps back. Let's talk about length. How long do you want this dog leash to be? The best way to decide how long you want it to be, if you have a dog and you're making it for your own dog, is to measure your favorite leash. If you take your leash, I'm going to use this one that I've already made, and you measure from the fold of the handle down to here. You don't need to measure the clip part because that's irrelevant to our fabric sewing. So you're going to measure down to here. Measure that whole length, then measure how much it flips over, right? So for getting your hand in there, what size are you comfortable with? And then add about 2 to 3 inches for this part. And that is how long your perfect leash is going to be. Let's get started. We know we want this black piece to be first because we want this to be the handle. Remember, dark fabric, folded over. And then I'm just going to add these different prints as I go. And I'm just going to do it at the sewing machine, but I'm just going to kind of show you how I'm going to do this here. Then I'm going to put a small white piece. Then I'm going to put the chickens because I want them pretty far up the leash. And then I'm just going to keep going. Black, red, white, black, red, white. I'm going to start with the long black because I want that to be my handle. And then I'm just going to sew these pieces together, right sides together. If I do have something directional, you want to make sure it's going in the right way. And we're just going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam and a pretty small stitch length since we're not going to be knotting at the front and back. So I usually use between a 1.8 and a 2.0. So as you can see, this isn't an exact science. I'm just kind of alternating the colors, so it's gonna have a pattern to it, but you don't even have to do that. Now we have this all sewn together, and it is 90 inches long, so it's going to be a nice length. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to press all of these seams open. If you were to press them to one side and then fold, you're going to have a lot of bulk. So you're going to have less bulk for this project if you press all of these seams open. I told you I'd tell you about this quilter's clapper. I like to just put that down after I iron. It absorbs some of the heat and also flattens that seam just a little bit more than you would get without doing it. Totally optional tool, but one that I am absolutely in love with and use all the time now. You'll spend the most of your time on this project ironing, and second most sewing, obviously. Have you ever made your dog a leash? I have another tutorial where I show you how to use scraps of fabric and put it on top of nylon webbing. So it's a little bit of a different material. You're basically making a nylon leash that you're decorating with fabric on one side. So there'll be a link below the video to show you where you can find that. But this is just a different way to go, and it's fabric on both sides. This could be a fun gift for someone who has everything, but they also have a dog. You could make a set of dog leashes, maybe monthly dog leashes, one for each season, for holidays, things like that. Okay, we have all of these seams pressed open. Now, the next thing we need to press is we have to go the entire length, and we're going to press this in half. Next, we're going to be adding our strips of fusible fleece. So we're going to open this up, and I have a few 1-inch strips. This I bought off of a bolt. So it's 44 inches wide, and I did a couple 1-inch strips. So what you're going to do is you're going to feel it to make sure you're putting the fusible part down. And it's a little bit gritty, is how you can tell. This side is soft, that side's a little gritty because I'm feeling the fusible material. And then I'm just going to line it up with that crease that we just made, but I'm going to leave a 1/4 inch from the end because we're also going to be pressing both ends in like this, and we don't need the bulk of that pressed. We don't want to lose that crease that we just made. So what I do is I just place it down, and then I fold that, and then I press in sections to fuse that fleece. I'm going to just open it back up, move it down, and continue the process all the way down. And when you're folding that over, you want to make sure that fleece stays in the fold and doesn't like push forward. So just be gentle when you're folding that back over. Now we've gotten to the end of this piece of fleece. So I'm going to take the next one and I'm just going to butt it right up. You could overlap it a teeny bit, but if you keep it in place to iron, you're going to be totally fine. It's going to stay exactly where you need it to be. So if your fleece is longer than your leash, you want to grab some scissors and cut that off about a 1/4 inch from the end. Now I'm going to fold and press each end a 1/4 inch. All right, next step, we're going to take the side that is on the same half as the fleece, and we are going to fold that over, and we are going to press the length. But again, don't go all the way over because we don't want to lose that crease. So just stay on this side of that center crease. You could fuse the fleece and do this fold at the same time, but I find it to be more accurate when you do it as 2 separate steps. This is a very similar process, just a lot longer fabric as making key fobs or key wristlets. People call them different things. Have you ever tried that? I have a tutorial for how to make key wristlets as well, which uses the same kind of pressing and fleece and things like that. You're just going to finish it with key fob hardware to hold your keys instead of with a swivel hook to hold your dog. Now we're going down and we're doing the same thing on the other side. So we are basically, this side fleece has been added and we folded it in half. Now we are folding the other side in half, and then our final step will be to flip it and press it that one last time. Then we are back to the sewing machine. But first we gotta do 2 more quick runs down this entire leash. For our final run, I'm going to be using the bigger clapper. It's called a tailor's clapper versus a quilter's clapper because I want to clap as much length as I can at a time. And I'm going to be using clips. So we're going to be doing this final fold. You want to make sure any threads stay inside here. If they're in there, no one will ever see them again. If they're like hanging out over the edge, you'll have more trimming to do later. So we're just going to be folding this in half and pressing. Ideally, these two folds that we just did will line up. If they're a little bit off, no problem at all, because we're going to be sewing down both sides. Now for this step, because it's the last step, I'm going to be using the clapper just to really get those creases and that pressing nice and flat. And then I'm just going to put a clip to hold it together every 8 to 10 inches. So we're going to be doing that down the entire length, and then we're going to be ready to go back to the sewing machine. Now we have the entire length with fleece in there, folded, 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 and we are going to sew just all the way around the 4 sides, about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, just to give it that stability and also to sew this part closed. So back to the sewing machine. And because this is really top stitching, I do use a longer stitch length so it doesn't take quite as long, because the 1.8 to 2.0 isn't necessary, so I usually use a 3. Now we just need to add the swivel hook, and I'm going to add a D-ring. That is totally optional. So first we're going to put the swivel hook on the end where you're going to attach it to your dog. So remember, I did the long black piece is going to be the handle, so I don't want to put the swivel hook on that side. I want to put it on this other end. So I'm just going to push the strap through the swivel hook, fold that in half, about 1.5 to 2 inches. You just want to have enough room that we can sew a rectangle with crosses in the middle just to make that nice and secure. Decided it was going to be easier to show you how to do the handle from my workspace than right at the sewing machine, because this is really important. So I've already sewn on the swivel hook, okay? So we want to make sure that we are going to loop the handle the same direction so that this doesn't look pretty on one side, but then the handle is the opposite side. So what I do is I hold it like this, and then I just pull the entire length through my hands and I flip like that, because now we know that it's going to be folded over on the same side of the leash. And you want to fold it over about 8 inches, which is almost exactly the length of the black. And then always just put your hand in there and decide if that, feels pretty good. You're going to lose about 1 inch as we sew that on. So I'm just going to do it the black to the black. And I am going to put this optional D-ring on here in case I want to hook, or whoever I give this to wants to hook anything on it. You might hook a little chapstick holder on there. This is another thing, and I have another tutorial for how to make the dog poop bag holder, and that can get clipped on there too. There'll be a link below the video to show you where to find the tutorial for this. So there's just different things. You might want to hook your keys on there, different things people might want to hook on there with their dog leash. So I like to add the D-ring. And I just leave it wherever, because we're going to sew this to secure it first. And then we're going to move the D-ring down here, and then we're going to sew again just past it so that it holds it in place and it's not just flailing around your leash handle like it is right now. If you want to make a leash that is just one fabric, I made it with one piece of fabric. I did 2 cuts, 4 inches times width of fabric, and made the handle, flipped that over, and that was super, super quick to make. We have finished our scrappy dog leash, and here are the 3 different ways. The one that we just did, we just sewed straight. So you have straight strips of fabric in different directions, and you'll notice that these chickens look amazing because we knew just how to place them and fussy cut them. Not as amazing on the back side, but I think they look fantastic on the front. Or if you prefer this angled look, you're just going to put that together mitered, just like you would be making quilt binding. Or you can make it out of a single fabric. That's definitely faster and just a different look. So let me know in the comments which you prefer and which you think you might try. I would love to know how you're going to use these, who you're going to make them for, what style you like the best, but most importantly, have fun sewing and happy dog walking.